This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I'm Krista Harmon, and I am so excited to have Matt, we're going to call him Fergy, Ferguson with us today. He's a photographer. Welcome, Fergy.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Well, I'm delighted to have a creative with us today. I was sharing with you a little earlier that so many young people need to know how they can make a living out of it, if that's a possibility. So we like to start with when you're a little younger, though, Fergy. Take us back to when you were, 15 or 16 years old. Did you think you'd grow up to be a professional photographer? Tell us your thoughts.
I did. I always wanted to be a photographer. I knew that, I don't know, from even before that. When I was a kid, there used to be a thing called paper routes where you deliver papers door to door. Ask your grandparents, they'll know. And I would save my paper route money to buy Polaroid. And then I would shoot that, and then I would earn more money and buy more Polaroid. So I really did have that push. I knew I wanted to do several things. I wanted to be a disc jockey. I wanted to skydive. I wanted to scuba dive, and I wanted to be a photographer. So I've done snorkeling, not scuba yet, but the rest of them I did.
So you've got to be a DJ. We're going to dig into that in a few minutes. Then we'll get to hear that. So you always knew, and I mean, tell us where that interest came from. Just someone gave you a Polaroid when you were young, and to see that kind of happen before your eyes, or what was that spark that you just fell in love with it?
Good question. I remember as a kid going to the library, and they used to rent out 16 millimeter movie projectors and movies. And these were the old fashioned movie projectors and the films had sprocket holes, and you led the film through the machine and projected it on the wall. And you would get these little black and white movies that they would lease out at the library. And I remember projecting them on the wall for like my friends in the neighborhood, giving a movie, and they were, little things of like the Three Stooges or some little wacky little shows. But I think that was a lot of it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I wonder if libraries do any of that anymore, just to loan the equipment out of that.
It's all CDs and videos. I doubt that, they would do anything like that, but yeah.
Yeah, our local libraries loan out camping equipment, which is kind of cool.
Camping.
Camping equipment, yeah.
That'd be great.
So here you are. Were you always a creative kid? Were you always drawing? Were you did you like music? Tell us about some of the other sides of your personality with creativity.
Yeah, I didn't play music, but I was always a great fan, listener of music. But I just, excuse me, I was outdoors. I was doing a lot of fishing and things like that with my dad. Let me get some water.
Sure. This is informal, no worries.
Okay. But I guess we were pushed more to work. I had jobs as a kid, 15 and 16 years old, you would have jobs making $1.75 an hour, something like that. That was a big salary when you're flipping hamburgers in, Springfield, Illinois.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you had a paper route. So again, part of that hard work that you were starting off. And being an outdoors person with that fishing, did you know early on that you would not want to be like sitting at a desk, and that's maybe one of the reasons photography sounded interesting?
I don't know if it was so much about not being at a desk. It's just that the camera takes you a lot of places. It opens a lot of doors. It gives you an opportunity to meet all kinds of people and be in all kinds of places. And I've been all over the world and shot all kinds of celebrities and people because my camera has taken me places. It wasn't so much that I was against being in an office, and I worked in the office of the governor for 22 years in Illinois. So I was in office situations like that, but I was still kind of an independent player. I was the photographer guy, and there wasn't a lot of bosses over me. They just let me do my thing. So it was great like that.
Oh, that's great. So did you know that you had to did you have to get a college degree for this? Did you start just freelancing in your career grew? Tell us about that steps, like as you approach the end of high school, what was going on for you?
I did. Well, initially in the middle of high school, I went to career training. I went to what we would call a vocational school, in those days. And now obviously it's the CTE, but it's, my high school didn't have any kind of photo or darkroom or anything like that, but the vocational school did. And I found out about that. The counselor told me about it. And I decided to go that, and we would like get on a bus and go across town and go to the vocational situation. And there were people that were, nursing or carpentry or auto mechanics or whatever it was. And I was in the communications area. I was in it was print and photography and media training. So that was a great step up for me. And then when I did go to college, some of that, it wasn't credits exactly, but some of that experience applied, and I got to go into like 400 level classes as a freshman, and I got a big jump on college because I'd gone through that kind of system. So it helped me, and then I think I did a lot better because I had 4 years of like high level classes. I didn't have to start at the very beginning of college in the 100 level classes.
Yes, for any young people that are watching this, what a great encouragement to really check out in your area if you have a vocational or career tech center, like they say. I know here in Grand Rapids, we have a photography as part of our graphics program here at the Kent Career Technical Center. So how fantastic. You got hands-on early, and again, it expedited that college. You got to go to that higher level and really develop those skills at a new level. So was it a bachelor's in like fine arts or photography, or what was that about?
A Bachelor of Arts in Cinema and Photography,
Okay.
and minor in radio and television. So it was all the communications department. And this was at a university in Illinois, Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, Illinois, where the eclipse just went through big twice. Well, the last 5 years, I guess.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So you get this formal education while you're in college. Were you doing freelance work? Did you have an internship? Tell us kind of how you started to make that transition to the big boy world of your first job.
You're right on. You're right on. When I would come back in the summertime, I would try to figure out what I could do with my interest in photography and video. And I lived in the state capital, Springfield, Illinois. So most of the employment was the state government. So I went through the Department of Education. I got an internship there with their photo department. There was like 3 photographers, and they brought me in for the summer. And then I got another, like that was like I asked them, can I do this in the morning? And like, can I have another internship in the afternoon? And they're like, fine, knock yourself out, kid, So they did. So I went to this other place called the Illinois Information Service. And then I had like an afternoon internship there. And that was a lot more television production. They were doing a lot of TV spots and sending out, like, the different senators and representatives would do their little videos to send back to their home district. And they did we did early lottery TV commercials there and things like that too. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of creative people. And the photography part was actually a lot more independent, fewer people in it. But in television production, there's obviously a lot more people, to handle all the equipment.
So 2 things I wanted to point out from that little story for young people. One is here, he took the initiative to ask for the second internship. So I want to point that out.
Oh, yeah.
You have to step into those things. No one's going to bring it to you. And then also that most of us don't think about photography jobs or experiences in a government setting. So I think that's amazing. What would you like people to know about that? Just kind of, well, we'll talk about all your photography, but that specifically, like, what kind of things are they taking photographs of? How's it a full-time job?
Well, gosh, I used to have a list. I gave another talk not long ago and I had a list. There is law enforcement photography, wedding photography, fashion, tabletop, governmental, medical. There's cameras, everything, from the furniture that you're sitting on had to be photographed at some point to be in a catalog to sell to people to buy more furniture, So there are cameras. And now obviously we are flooded with cameras because of all the cell phone usage. But the first camera that I ever picked up that was digital was about the size of a toaster, and it was like a toaster with a lens. It was just like this giant thing, and it was like half a megapixel, and it was amazing. Nobody never seen anything. There's no film in here, So it was. I've had an interesting seat in this career to go from black and white darkroom work to color to digital to high tech to beyond and on to Photoshop and everything now. So it's been amazing to have this kind of seat in the front row and see all these changes go by.
Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you for spelling out some of those opportunities. So how did you get your first job out of college? Was it networking? Did you I mean, I'm old school, so we had newspapers back then. We heard about jobs. So
The first jobs?
yeah, was it networking? Was it through some of the people you'd met along the way?
Well, you mean real jobs in photography?
Yeah, like your first, like, was it freelance for a while, or did you start getting like that
Oh, I
first?
see. Well, as I said, I was doing that internship at the Illinois Information Service, and it was like an in-house media facility for the state of Illinois. They did, video and radio production and print and, news releases and any kind of communication and they had a photo section. And just has happened when I came out of college, about 2 months later, one of the photographers was leaving, and I was already an intern and well known within the group. And they called me and said, "Hey, you want a job?" And I said, "Yeah," but it was because I guess I did a pretty good job as an intern and showed up on time and did my work and hustled and showed that I really wanted to learn and was just starving, hungry to learn. And I think that's what gave me that shot. And again, that led to my 22-year career, and traveled all over the world with 3 governors and celebrities and presidents and all that kind of thing. This is
Marvelous.
making me I'm remembering stuff I haven't even thought of in years. This is kind of neat.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So I do want to point out that you were showing up on time and having good attitude and being a hard worker. And I want young people to hear that, because that is how our career paths often go. When we're doing a good job, people are paying attention. And that's what really want them to glean from this kind of information review.
And I pay attention now when I hire photo assistants to come on shoots with me. And if I've got somebody that's, really working their tail off, and somebody that shows up a half hour late, it's really easy to make those changes, I guess, in a sense. Yeah. Make those judgments really fast.
Absolutely. So encouragement to young people. So let's focus on that 22-year stint. Tell us about what a typical day was like for you in that kind of role with governors and how you got to travel. What a typical day might have been, and what were some of your favorite and least favorite parts of that job?
Oh, Krista, it was magical. I had a dream job. It was fabulous. I mean, I remember working in that office with the IIS people, and then they started bringing me up like, "Hey, do you want to?" One of the press secretary calls me one day and says, "Hey, do you want to cover the governor? You want to fly up to Chicago with the governor?" And I was like, "Okay, sure," and I'm 21 years old or something, and they said, "Well, be at the little airport. We're going up on this little plane up to Chicago, and you'll be back by 6 o'clock or whatever." So I get on this plane, and I'm 6'2", and the governor is like 6'7", and I'm sitting right across from him in this little airplane. I mean, there's a couple other guys, security guys, and the press secretary, but my knees, I'm trying not to touch his knees with my knees. And I think he probably thought I had a speech impediment for the first 6 weeks because I could hardly talk. I was so nervous because he's the governor, So it was a little nerve-wracking in the beginning, but as time went on, my job was really to in a sense do positive photography of what he was doing and get the word out of what he was accomplishing, and then get those photographs to the Associated Press and United Press International and to the Chicago Tribune, and sometimes once in a while to Time and Newsweek, the national magazines at the time. And so that was my job, and I would stick with him on the day. We'd get the schedule monthly, weekly, and then daily, so I knew where he was going to be, and I knew where the most visual parts of his day was going to be. And I would intercept, or I would run the whole day until I got a shot that I thought would play for the wire services, and then I would hightail it off of outside of the entourage, let's call it, and then I would work my way back, and then I had to get to downtown Chicago to process the film, and then really literally walk negatives around town and go to the next photo department and pitch this photograph that I wanted them to publish in their newspaper. And so it's the kind of stuff that takes us 2 seconds on our phone today. It was all physical running around town then.
Yeah, so you've seen some amazing changes with technology, I can imagine. What would you like to share about just the technology changes you've witnessed and what it's about now?
Well, as I mentioned, the first digital camera was the size of a toaster that we saw, and that was actually through the Associated Press photographers, and it was really Kodak invented digital photography, but then they didn't support it. They kept doing research and development on their films for some reason, and then other companies took off with it. And I remember Canon would give the Associated Press guys these cameras and say, okay, take them to the Olympics or take them to whatever, political campaign or whatever, and work it out, work all the bugs out, break it, see what breaks. And we wanted you to test it and wanted to be, used in a real hard way to see what was wrong. So there's just very early models of digital cameras. And now I still shoot all Nikons, and I've had the same Nikon lenses that I've used on film cameras forever. And I put them on, high res, backs. And there's one on the tripod back there, I guess. So I shoot high-end, high-res digital photography now, and haven't shot film for 25 years, I guess, something like that.
Well, let me just ask you, because I'm sure there's a young photographer who's going to want to know, what would you recommend for that first camera as they're getting a little career started? Like, is there one that is going to serve them well? It sounds like you've had yours for a while on your Nikon.
Oh, I've had dozens of Nikon over the years and Hasselblads and different things. Nikon cameras last. They run. It's like getting a Mercedes Benz. You can put 300,000 miles on a Mercedes Benz. That's not a surprise. And the Nikons too. They're tough and they last. But I mean, you can do so much with your phone now. You can. I saw this thing today too, where you can rent or not rent. You can buy. I don't have it here, but just as an example, there's a little grip that you can put that has a shutter button and it's Bluetooth to the camera, so you can actually hold. And rather than hold it like this, you can hold it like a real camera, and you can shoot. You can so it's a little. There's all kinds of little things. And these, I mean, I've done some amazing work with my phone. So it's not the camera; it's what's in your head and how hard you work it. It's your thought pattern. It's the toolbox. It's all the things, the influences that come to you from seeing movies and going to art galleries and reading magazines and just anything that enters your mind. Just if you want to try to. These days, I do a lot of black and white photography, and I try intentionally to make it kind of soulful and mysterious and kind of unique stuff, things that would hang on a gallery wall that would be, and sometimes that works into advertising as well too. I've taken images that have been black and white portraits that sort of come out with this almost a mystical feeling, and I ended up using those for an ad campaign for a salon, or not a spa, more of a health club kind of stuff. So black and white imagery of people pumping iron and gritty and sweaty and that kind of thing. So and I love to shoot in those kind of environments. Those are fun.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm going to pull us back just a little bit, because you were 22 years and got to travel all over the world with these multiple governors. When did you decide that was enough of that lifestyle? Because obviously it was a chunk, but you're continuing to work, and it sounds like you're doing ad campaigns now. So help us understand your thought process and where you got the courage to jump.
Well, I was kind of doing a lot of the advertising work on the side while I still had my real job. I would take days off. I would take time outs. Sometimes, my governor would be out of the state or on vacation or whatever. I'd have a lot more free time. I could kind of hustle up some side work and do some things. And that ended up being more than side work. It meant working for some pretty big advertising agencies in downtown Chicago, and doing all manner of photography, from photographing cars in the studio to being in helicopters, doing aerial stuff, everything that you can imagine. And really, it's when you're working and when you're swamped, more work just pours in. Because people see you and go, hey, we like the way you work. We got something next month coming up, so so I always had both things going. I had both things going during the governor's office and stuff too. So when I was ready to launch, when it was time, I was on my third one, and I said, "No, this is good." I sort of wasn't real crazy about the next guy coming in either. I didn't think I could listen to that many speeches, so it was time to hit the road, and I opened my own studio just west of the Sears Tower in Chicago, just west of the Willis Tower.
Then you became an entrepreneur at the next level, so kind of business side of photography. Help young people understand it's one thing to be the creative, but then it's another to actually run the business. What would you like them to know?
Well, that's a very good point, Krista. That's a great point. I've talked to students in the past too, and sometimes before it starts, I'll talk to the instructor, the teacher, and say, I'm going to kind of scare these kids a little bit. We're on a set, and we're shooting a car, and there's models, and there's all it's all kind of exciting, like a movie set, basically. And I'd say, that's all great, guys, but this is about maybe let's call it 10%. 10% of my work, 10% of my professional job has to do with the camera, and about 90% of it has to do with running the business and dealing with tax accountants and lawyers and attorneys and filing this form and doing this and sending out invoices and just like any other business. It would be the same if you were selling real estate or selling insurance. You still got to do the paperwork. You got to run your business. You got to know bankers and lawyers and things like that. So I would encourage anybody to get some business education, whether it's a degree or a minor in business, or just to take care of your own personal wealth. Anything you do, you're going to need some basic business tips. And I probably didn't get enough of that. I kind of had to learn it on the streets and make some mistakes along the way. But take business courses wherever you can.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of wisdom today, Fergie, that you're giving the students. And what I'm also hearing you say is that when you were busy doing that side hustle, you were grinding. This isn't a 9 to 5. You're working some serious hours. Help young people understand the reality of some of this type of work around hours, schedule.
Yeah. And also raising a family, having, the family and 2 kids and everything. So it was, but no, 16, 18-hour days would happen. And a lot of times for photographers, you need to be somewhere at sunrise. And that means getting up at 4 a.m. so you can, take a shower, get in the car, have the car loaded up the day before with all the gear, and then be ready to go at sunrise. So, there wasn't like a lot of sleep or anything, but I always enjoyed it so much. It wasn't a chore for me to get up because I was like, sometimes you're nervous, about you got this big shoot coming up and there's all these people and there's all this stuff and it would be a little nerve wracking. You couldn't sleep anyway. So getting up, I'm already up, so, but yeah, you had to hustle and work your tail off. And, but I never knew how to do anything other than that. That was kind of already built into me. So I was lucky like that.
That's what they say. I think it's Confucius that if you do the work you love, you're never going to work another day of your life.
Yeah, exactly right. Right. Yeah. Like you look like you enjoy your work. You probably love doing this, right? I'm interviewing you now.
Just a little, I was telling Fergie, you guys, that career chats are one of my favorite parts of my job. I love meeting people like Fergie and just hearing about everybody's career path. So you've given us some good insights into photography, and you started sharing just the wide variety. I'm going to just share my screen now because I want to show your website so that you can kind of show off some of the variety of work that you've done. So here's your Fergie Picks one. That's where I landed, Fergie. So let's see, portfolios.
Scroll down somewhat. Let's go back to that first page if you don't mind. Sure. And then just start scrolling down. I think there's a lot of stuff. And just so you know, there's a new site that we'll talk about too, but I think if you take the scrolling thing on the right and go all the way down, keep going lower. So this black and white shot of this like structure, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I think, is kind of soulful and rich and it has legs. I was in Mexico 2 or 3 years ago, and I kept going back to this site where this kind of structure was on the beach. And I really loved that. And I was just drawn to it. I'd go there two, 3 times a day and see how the light changed, how the shadows changed, the highlights. And I shot it in color, obviously, but then originally, and then if you click on anything, it should get a lot bigger. And maybe it just gets a little bigger on this one. It's the older website, but that kind of thing. And then right below there is the flying girl. It's in fact, I've got a shot of that here, but and we didn't have her running and jumping to hit a trampoline or anything. she was actually standing and on her tiptoes and leaning way back. So it's really a vertical shot.
Oh,
So you would think about it in a vertical. She was had some ballet experience, so she was able to tip back really far, and for a flash, for a second before she would sort of tumble out of it. But
well, I think that's what I'm hearing for photographers is you get to be pretty creative with, like you say, setting up the shot and how you want the angles or the, like you say, getting creative with what you want. I think that sounds so fun. So you have to be I mean, you truly have to be creative. It's not just taking pictures. There's this whole other side of setting up the shot, like these 6 women here,
oh,
managing the colors and how they're standing and all that.
well, before you have anybody come to the studio, you obviously want to have mapped out, even sketched out exactly what you're going to do from moment to moment. There's not, you just can't waste people's time, and you got to know what you want, and you get it for the a lot of times for the ad campaign, they have given you an idea of what they're looking for. The ladies that are all in different colored, they were all broadcasters. Those were all Chicago newscasters and their producers, and it was during COVID, so we couldn't all be in the same room. So I shot each one of those ladies individually, and then we put them together in post, so it looks like a group shot. And there was a couple of them that were a little. They would see each other in the hall or something. They were competitive, so they kind of didn't want to be in the same room anyway. Some of them were Channel 9 against Channel 2 against Channel 7, and there was a competition there that you didn't want to cross.
I'm going to show just that we have about 3 minutes left. So I want to show that you're doing some products, that there's all sorts of different things in addition to people that you're doing. Like every company that has a product needs somebody to photograph it. It's right. I mean, everything we buy, like you said earlier, needs to be photographed.
Yes, it is. There's one that's this kind of tulip thing is kind of reminds me of the one of the girl, flying through the air too, where it's kind of a visual joke. It's a visual illusion. There's a tulip hanging down, and then it becomes her tutu as well. So planning that kind of thing out. The cute little kid with the tater tots there, that was the tater tot company. They McCain's Potatoes in Naperville, Illinois. They made all kinds of different potatoes. So we shot kids in the morning, starting with kindergartner up to 3rd grade, 8th grade, and shot high school seniors eating potatoes till 10 o'clock that night.
I'm gonna stop sharing. I did put your website into the chat room so they can access it to see more of your work. So as we finish up, those 30 minutes always goes so fast, Fergie. I've so enjoyed it. But why don't you just give a word of wisdom to the young people who might be watching this, or their school counselors that maybe have kids who want to be creatives, and their first hesitation is to say, you need a real job. What do you want to say to that?
Well, we discussed this a little bit earlier. When I told my father I was going to get a degree in photography, he was kind of like, "You're going to do what? Well, you got to get a real job." And he wanted me to do all kinds of other things that I didn't have an interest in doing. But and still, until I got a photograph in Newsweek magazine, did he ever believe that, and had my name under the photograph as a photo credit, believe that it was a real endeavor. By that time, I had a wife and 2 kids and a home and everything. So he was kind of a tough sell. But I mean, your parents are looking out for you, and they know, the kind of career paths that make money and the ones that sometimes don't. But you got to work. You got to push. You got to knock on doors. You got to show up on time. You got to dress right. You got to do all those kind of things to impress. And sometimes you might not want to. I mean, I shot in a law firm not long ago, and there was a young man who showed up and he didn't want to put on a tie. He's working in some fancy law firm in a big shiny building in Wacker Drive in Chicago, probably making a lot more money than I do. And he didn't want to put on a jacket. It's like, and he said, "Don't you think that's okay?" And I said, "No, not so much. Look where you're working. You're doing okay. Put on a jacket, So sometimes some of the rules seem old and stodgy, but they'll work. And I think when you're in a position to hire people, you'll see it that way too. You'll know who's a worker and who's not. But it's about effort and learning where you can and networking, getting to know people that can lead you to other opportunities. And I'm not talking about doing anything that's distasteful, to get close to people just because of that, but you'll just keep your ears open. You never know what kind of opportunities. Let people know what you do. If you're a painter, a musician, or a poet or anything, let people know. Let them see your portfolio, show your book. People are usually afraid, oh, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Well, the people you're showing it to, they don't know you're not ready yet. They don't think about that. They just want to see what you do and have that kind of, don't hide your, what is it? Hide your light under a bushel basket or whatever that thing is. Don't hide your candle. Get out, show your work, have some fun, and be proud of your work and defend your work and tell people about the details of it.
Great way to end, Fergie. Fantastic words of wisdom there to just be bold and really honor your creativeness. Not everybody has it, so to put it out there. Thanks for being with us today. Go ahead.
I owe it to you for being such a good interviewer. Thank you for pulling this out of me. Like I say, I haven't thought about some of this stuff in a long time. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.